it wouldn't be a presentation in our auditorium without some kind of fuss with the technology. April, next month, is National Poetry Month. And also, the first Saturday in April is April 1st. This is my idea. I would like to have some of you, and I'll let you know later about how I'm going to work out who does what. Choose a poem that you'd like. It doesn't have to be a poem that you've written. I'd like to have several people come up here and share with us a poem that is somehow meaningful to you. And of course, as you know, poetry will span the gamut. You can read a funny one, a sad one, whatever kind of poem, something. But please don't choose to read the entire Rubaiyat or something like maybe sonnet length or thereabouts. More about this later, but I think I would like to start out the month of April and April Fool's Day with that as our program, and think about whether you want to volunteer to be one of the poetry readers. Okay, that's my announcement, and we are all, most of us, are familiar and love to hear Lowell talk about his travels in the world, and it's Croatia today. So, Lowell Sever.
Thank you very much. What an introduction. Most of the travel talks I've given have been with places that most of you have not been. Croatia, on the other hand, I think probably a number of you have been. How many of you have been to Croatia? Okay, I kind of figured that. So hopefully today I'm going to tell you some things you may not know, but also bring back fond memories. It's a very interesting country, and I wanted to share some things from a couple of trips that I've taken there. Begin with the Croatian flag. It's actually the French tricolor with the coat of arms of Croatia on top of it. Croatia was part of the former Republic of Yugoslavia. Over the last 200 years, there are lots of changes that have taken place in this part of the world. This is a map, relatively current, except Macedonia is now the Republic of North Macedonia. But you can see here Croatia, the green extending along across the top and then down the Adriatic coast. The Adriatic coast. It's, to me, one of the most oddly shaped countries anywhere around. And to a large degree, that's determined by topography that you'll see in a minute. This shows Croatia itself. But interestingly, the shape is pretty well determined by the topography. And you can see here. So Croatia, the Pannonian Plains here, down into the Dalmatian coast. And this little spot here is a city called Num. It's Bosnia and Herzegovina. And basically, to go from this part of Croatia to this part, you have to leave the country and re-enter. And it is not part of the Schengen zone, or it wasn't when I was there. So basically, you go through customs here and here, which is kind of interesting to have a country that's basically divided from itself. There are a lot of islands, and some of those popular tourist places are in fact the islands. I have not been to the islands, so I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about places that I've been. Interesting comment. I tried to find a good map that showed the ethnic groups in Croatia, and I couldn't find a good one. But this is a good surrogate for this because this is a map that shows the religious groups. And I'm sure you can't read this. The brown are the Catholic parts of the country. Those are the Catholics. The blue are Orthodox, which means basically Serbians. And the green are Muslim, which are basically Bosniaks. And then there are some Lutherans around, That's what's called evangelicals here. A few pockets. Those would be basically primarily from German settlements, and then the leftover Christian groups. The history of Croatia is tied to the history of Yugoslavia, which is tied to conflict between religions and ethnic groups. It's as simple as that. But it's complex. And so when you try to understand what's happened in Yugoslavia with the breakup, you bring into account different ethnic groups, different religious groups, and different language groups. And so the history of this part of the world is incredibly complex, and a lot of it played out in 1991 to 95 when what was Yugoslavia broke up. In 1991, Slovenia first left Yugoslavia, Croatia left, and then the result was war. Yugoslav wars from 1991 to 1995. I'm going to start with a place, not what you might expect, not the Dalmatian coast, and not Dubrovnik. I'm going to start on the Danube. This is the Danube, and down here, then turning and going over here, Belgrade is over here. I'm going to start with a town called Vukovar. Susan and I were there in 2016. We did a Danube cruise from Budapest up here to the Black Sea down here. And Vukovar was one of our first stops after Budapest. Beautiful city, sitting on the Danube. Here, picture postcard perfect. Cruise terminal here. Beautiful old town along the river. Cafes, sidewalk cafes, churches. And here's why I want to talk about Vukovar. Vukovar, this is a quote from The Lonely Planet. No war museum filled with mementos, photos, arms, and uniforms could more eloquently capture the horror and futility of war than the ruined buildings of downtown Vukovar. Vukovar was the most heavily damaged city in Europe after World War II. During the war, it was Croatian, but it was sitting across the Danube from Serbia. It had a large Serbian minority population, so it was predominantly Catholic Croatian, but with a large Serbian population. And basically, the Serbs blew the hell out of it. This is still there. The churches, you can see what happened to the church. But symbolic of Vukovar is this, the water tower. You can see the flag on the top, and unfortunately the poster that I had prepared for the class, the flag's really cut off. But this is a symbol of resistance. That this water tower, this water tower was hit by hundreds of rockets and missiles, but it didn't fall down. And the Croatians consider this a sign of their resistance. So the water tower in Vukovar is incredibly symbolic for the people of Croatia. It's a symbol of their resistance.
Who were they resisting?
The Serbs.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
In World War
I
II?
thought I made that clear. This is a part of, I don't want to go back to the slide. This is a part of Croatia that sits right across the Danube River from Serbia. It had a large Serbian population. If I went back to the religious slide, I thought I pointed it out, maybe I didn't. That this was an area of extreme conflict. Thousands of people were killed. Serbs were thrown out, and they still don't get along.
World War II?
Oh, this is the Yugoslav War,
Thank you.
1991 to 1995.
Thank you.
So that's who they were resisting. They were resisting the Serbs. Let me go back. The Serbs and the Croats do not like each other. They have never liked each other. They still don't like each other. And it's an extremely complex situation. Now, there's another little town around there that's kind of interesting, sitting right up the road. Let me point out again. Here's Vukovar. This is Serbia. Here's the Danube going over this way. This is the border with Serbia. This is Moldavania. It's a region in Yugoslavia, but I want to go over here to see. This is a nice old town along one of the major tributaries of the Danube. So this river is going this way, flowing into the Danube. Nice downtown, picturesque. Onion domes, Orthodox,
Yeah.
Catholic Church. So a heterogeneous population, but the Serbs got thrown out. And a lot of fighting went across that river that I showed you there. This is an old fortification from the early 1800s. At this time, this part of Croatia was controlled by Hungary, and these are the walls, the fortress walls around the city to protect them from whom? The Turks coming up in the south. And this is about almost as far north as the Turks made it. And this is really early on in times. An interesting stone tower, but a walled city with a very interesting old city inside. So those are the two places I wanted to talk about on the Danube, that part of northeastern Croatia. I'm going to now go to places probably, if you've been to Croatia, this is the place you've been. Dubrovnik, you may have been some other places as well, but probably anybody that's ever been to Croatia has been to Dubrovnik. It's a fast location, you haven't been there. Somebody's always got to disagree with me, especially with universities. Okay, so now we've gone to the coast. You can see the Adriatic there. This is an area called Dalmatia. You can see here again this little spot, Bosnia and Herzegovina, spot where they have access to the sea. Nothing would be landlocked. And here's the picture that you've probably seen, either seen the picture or seen in person. A fantastically preserved old city with walls, an interesting view across. I'm going to come back to these buildings because they're of particular historical significance. But a beautiful port, city, and a long history of trade. It was one of the trading centers. It was called Ragusa before it was called Dubrovnik, but a major trading center on the Adriatic. Conflict with Venice. Venice is up there. Conflict with Rome, which is over here. But it's there on the Adriatic coast. Beautiful port city. Walls are relatively intact. Crystal clear water, lots of boats. A popular tourist spot. Again, the walls of the city. And if you go there, this is the gate to the north of the city. This is how you get into the city center. Is through this gate right here. And you go through that gate, and back over where I am now is where the buses go. The tour buses go, the city buses go. If you're on a cruise ship, your bus goes, they drop you off right here. You go through that gate, and the first thing you come to is a fountain. And this is a major landmark. Not too busy a day, comparatively. You walk through the fountain, then you walk into what's called the Plakia, which is a very large square, a huge square that's the center of the old city. What you see here is the exterior of a Franciscan monastery, and what you see in these walls are bullet holes, or shell blocks. The city of Dubrovnik survived relatively well the wars. There is lots of evidence of war. There were thousands of people, or hundreds of people killed, not thousands. Unlike Sarajevo, which was basically destroyed, this city was attacked, but it survived. If we go inside that building, this is the monastery courtyard, beautiful gardens. One of the things that's particularly interesting about the monastery, about the building, is that it contains either the oldest or the third oldest pharmacy still operating in Europe. It dates back to the 1600s. So you can see the old apothecary kind of things, and there's still a functioning pharmacy. This doesn't show it, but if you go to the prescription, you can get it filled. So if we go back into the placa, back out into this big square, we're going to go to the Franciscan monastery is back to the left. We're going to walk down here. Not too busy. When we were there, when Susan and I were there, we were on a cruise from Venice. You could barely walk through there. It's like St. Mark's Square in Venice. It is so full with people, you basically can't walk. I mean, there's just a lot of folks. So this is kind of like interesting. Bell tower down here. So we're going to walk on down this way. This is the rector's palace. This is the equivalent of the Doge's palace in Venice. The guys that were here basically controlled the trade out of Dubrovnik when it was a major port on the Adriatic. So the rector's palace here, we're going to swing around this way. There's the bell tower. We're going to swing around this way. Bell tower. Here's St. Blaise Church. This is a Catholic church. Here's the exterior of it full on. Here's the interior. St. Blaise is the patron saint of Croatia, and you can see a highly decorated altar, and of course, tourists taking pictures are the norm. This is the gate at the other end of the plaza. So we started at one end, we came to the fountain, we walked through the square, we went to the church, we saw the rector's palace. Now we're exiting out to get to this passageway to get to here. And this is the inner harbor. So the way we came out would be right up in here. Here's St. Blaise. We came out here, and here's the marina. Beautiful, beautiful little place. Looking back closer, this is the cathedral. St. Blaise is over here, cathedral here, and the old city walls, which are intact. This is an interesting complex of buildings. You can see the red tile roofs here. This was a major seaport. Ships coming in. What happens when ships come in? Well, they carry with them diseases. Particularly cholera was a major issue. What these buildings were buildings where the crews of ships were quarantined. And you can see that there are a whole bunch of buildings, so that each building would be a separate ship. Crew from ships would be placed in separate buildings for a period of 40 days. And that's where quarantine comes from. So 40 days. And this is the origin of that for the seaport. So it's one of the important landmarks in Dubrovnik. Okay. Now, why are there a lot of tourists in Dubrovnik? It's a cruise port. Roger talked about Venice, the impact that Venice has for cruising. Well, here's Dubrovnik. Here's Dubrovnik. So figuring that this ship probably carries somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 to 3,500 passengers. This is a smaller one, probably 1,500. 1, 2, 3, 4. All these people are going the same place. They're going into the park. They're going to walk down to see the marina. So for what Roger said about Venice, certainly applies to Dubrovnik as well. And it's a question of how much tourism can it survive. So let's leave Dubrovnik. We're not going to go on a cruise ship, but we could. We're going to go up the coast of Split. So here's Dubrovnik down here. Here's Split here. Beautiful harbor, beautiful city. Split. This is the inner harbor. Another look at it. That where we were before is out here. So this is the smaller ships line up in here. Toledo, so that the Adriatic is over here. These are all restaurants along the waterfront. You might think the seafood there is good. Yes. Like octopus, it's really great for octopus. What's Split best known for? The Diocletian Palace. Diocletian was a Roman emperor in the 4th century. He was from this area and decided when he retired he wanted to build a small retirement home, something like the University House. They're in Split. So basically what you see here is the palace that he had built. It is now full, well it was at the time, it still is, full of churches, a lot of interesting architecture. This is the lower level. As you come in, the ubiquitous gift shop here, but an incredibly complex series of buildings that basically make up the heart of Split. Again, part of the palace here. So these date back, a lot of restoration, of course, but back to Roman days of the 4th century. This is the cathedral that's inside this palace complex. So this is huge. It's hard to estimate how big it is, but it's huge. So this is the cathedral bell tower and the interior of the cathedral. Keep in mind, this is Catholic. We're in Croatia. We're not dealing with Serbs. We're not dealing with Orthodox. This is a Catholic cathedral. There in the heart of Diocletian's palace. Now, some of you, if you've heard my talks before, know that I like markets. This is a market just outside the walls of the palace, a vegetable market. But more interestingly, for me at least, is the fact that it's also a flea market. So you can see an interesting collection of junk here. You need a rotary phone. You need a little wooden box. Well, that little bowl there probably has coins in it. And the only thing I bought there was coins. Because there was a moratorium against me buying stuff. Coins are small. It's not like I'm buying a chair that's visible. Coins are small. I put it in my bag. Anyhow, but a very interesting flea market. Basically right outside the walls there. Now, to me, one of the high points of Croatia is Plitvice Lakes National Park. And if you've been there, you will remember it. If you haven't, if you ever have a chance, it is really well worth seeing. So here's Split. It's right up here. Here's the capital, Zagreb here, and here's the national park. This is from the publicity, the tourist brochure it gives you an idea of how it's laid out. mountains with a series of lakes connected by waterfalls. So let's take a look. Let's start at the top and work our way down. Here's what the uppermost lakes feeding into this lake. And that lake feeds through these waterfalls into another lake. More waterfalls. And what's interesting about it is that there are these wooden walkways all around the park, around the lake. You can also take a boat out into the larger lake, but the highlight really are the walkways along the waterfalls. And it's one of those things that the pictures are dramatic. The seeing it in person is really amazing. There are lots of people there, particularly if you're in high season. I was there in the fall, and it wasn't quite so bad. But it's interesting because even though there are lots of people there, it's tranquil. It's just an absolutely gorgeous place. More waterfalls. More waterfalls. And more waterfalls. So it's really spectacular, and it's nestled down in the mountains. So everywhere you look behind the water are verdant mountains. It's really green mountains. At least in the fall, they're not green. They're probably the leaves change color. This is probably one of the more dramatic falls. But there's a series of lakes, and then the waterfalls that basically connect the lakes, and then there's a river at the end that drains it out. Plebiscite National Park, Plebiscite Lakes. So I'm going to go back to the coast, and I want to go up the coast, up into the northern part of coastal Croatia. So here, we're right here, Rijeka. Capital here is Zagreb. We're not going to go there. We started in Dubrovnik. We went to Split. We went to the lakes, which are here, and now we're up here on the Adriatic Riviera. Beautiful place. Old fortress on the hill, looking over the old town and the modern buildings here. A lot of old hotels. This area was popular with European royalty as a place to stay. And so back, you'd have kings, you'd have princesses, you'd have prime ministers and so on. This was a place on the coast of the Adriatic that was a major tourist attraction in the 1800s, and then until the 1900s when things fell apart. You may recall that the First World War started in Sarajevo, in Bosnia. And there was a lot of contention here. This was part of Austria at that time. And so there's been, it's a crossroads place. And we'll talk about a little bit more in just a minute. But you can see a beautiful coastal city, a nice downtown, very, very Eastern European, with a Mediterranean flair. Church here, lots of sidewalk cafes, just a beautiful coastal city. Another view of it, some of the more modern hotels, beachfront property, and so on. Then if we go up the coast a little further around the bend, we come to Opatia. So let's look at a map. We were right here, and now we're over here. Here's the Adriatic, Zagreb's up here, Split, and Dubrovnik are down here, and we're going to be right here. It's a place called Istria. An interesting little tidbit. Helen shared this with me. My great-grandparents were French. My grandparents were Austrian. My parents were Italian. I'm Yugoslavian. My children are Croatian. We never left the village. Thank you, Helen.
You're welcome.
I've heard this before, but Helen shared this with me. And it really illustrates the fact that here's a place, one place, a microcosm of what happened in this part of the world over, this would be roughly 200 years. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And just to go back, if I had the big map of Croatia, you would see that this is the Istrian Peninsula here. Italy, Venice is up here, up there about where that speaker is. And this, like Rijeka, was a popular tourist place. So two beautiful coastal cities along the northern Adriatic. Take a look at the harbor now. Again, the old hotels lining the waterfront. A nice beach. Lots of cafes. Again, beachside hotels. Probably these two cities outside of Dubrovnik, the most popular tourist places in Croatia, particularly for European tourists who come down for Germans, particularly Germans, Austrians, who come down for the beach scene. We'll walk along the promenade, old hotel buildings here. You want me to get that? And so we say goodbye to Croatia. Questions or comments?
Wow, that's so interesting.
I wanted to leave a lot of time because I thought there would probably be people who'd be interested in sharing their ideas. But yeah,
What's the
microphone
highest?
person.
I think about it.
Microphone person.
Oh. What's the highest altitude, do you know, in that area?
Well, no. To answer that, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to the topographic map.
And along with that, do they have snow in winter?
Yes. It's the Dinaric Alps. These are the generic Alps right here. So I don't know how high they are. Other comments or questions? Is your voice quiet?
I don't know if you had your hand up.
I'll wait.
No?
What?
I'd say I'll wait.
You wait,
I
okay.
mean, it's a question
Yeah.
period, I don't see it.
This-
interrupting.
No, this is the question period.
Oh.
I'm done. I guess it was too subtle to say goodbye to Croatia.
Well, yeah. Wrong language, okay.
Now is your chance to ask questions, make inane comments, however you're so moved.
Al's next, Henry.
Microphone, please.
Yeah.
In Opatiek there was a statue out on the promontory.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Anybody else?
You know what I'm talking about, though?
Yeah, I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is I find remarkable that none of these places seem to have any beaches. They're on they're on the Adriatic. You'd think there'd be some nice beaches.
Oh, yeah, they have beaches.
You don't see any of
I
them.
didn't, well, okay, I'll take it.
Okay,
I didn't show pictures of beaches. There are beaches. You know, that's why people go there. It's not ours beach. All those places have beaches. Sorry, I didn't take any. You're looking for bikinis? Okay, yeah.
well, it's really beautifully illustrated, even though you don't have a lot of beaches or bikinis. But where do you get your photos? Are a lot of these yours, or can you get that much online?
Well, let me tell that story again. I've told it many times. I can't find my photos. So all these are online. But all of them are places that I've been.
It's an amazing collection to be able to get that much online.
It is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I could go to Dubrovnik and I'll pull up 1,500 pictures.
Oh, God.
The things I don't have pictures of me eating pizza every place. That did not make it online. If I had my pictures, you would see me. The best pizza I ever had, in fact, was in Split, or in Bled, Slovenia.
Vukovic has it.
What does? Where does?
Vukovic.
Has the best pizza?
The best pizza?
Pizza in the world.
Okay, see, everybody's
Just got
got
off
their
the
favorite.
airplane all by myself, didn't know a soul, walked down to the park. and had the
Use
best
the
pizza I had
microphone.
ever had.
We can't hear you.
Oh,
Best pizza in the world I've ever had.
where?
And where?
Vukovic. No.
Okay, well, I missed it.
That's where I arrived in the first time in Croatia.
Okay, now I know. If I go back, I'll try it.
Who's next over there, Lorraine?
Along the river.
Okay. Or Eric, okay.
What can you tell us about the national soccer team?
Interestingly, we were in, we were there for the 2016 World Cup, and we watched Croatia play in the World Cup in 2016 in Vukovic. There was a large TV set up, probably 5 times the size of this, in the city square, and I went out and I rooted for Croatia along with the other Croatians. I didn't have a scarf. They played well. They did not win the World Cup, but this was 2016 World Cup. So they played good soccer. They have, that's the national team. Playing soccer within Croatia, there are Serbian teams and there are Croatian teams. In Vukovar there are separate schools for Serbs and Croats. That was the way it was in 2016, but it's the same way now, I'm not sure. I think probably it is. The divisions run deep. And to a large degree it's based on religion. Not entirely, but a lot of it's based on religion. Yeah.
Okay, I think Judy first and then Jerry. Okay.
I had a dear friend in St. Louis who was visiting with the wife from Croatia. And they had a baby and I was helping them with the baby. And one day one of them was singing a song. And I said, what are the lyrics to that song? And it was, hush little baby, be really quiet because if you don't, the Turks will come in the cave and kill you. Lullaby and good night.
I've talked.
Happy dreams.
I've talked more about the recent history, but the earlier history was the Turks.
Yeah.
And the remnants of that are the Bosniaks in Bosnia who were Muslim. If we go back to the slide, to this one, I thought I pointed it out, but maybe I didn't.
Yeah, they were Muslim.
Up here, here's Vukovar up in here. See those blue? Those are Serbs. So you've got Serbs. Serbia's across the river here. The green are Muslims. This is Bosnia. So that this is part of the issue. But in the past, it was conflict between the Austrians and the Hungarians up here and the Turks coming up from down here. And a lot of the defenses, that I pointed out, were built to keep the Turks out. So before they didn't like each other, nobody liked the Turks. I guess, it's kind of, I made this comment before. My brother is my enemy, but my brother and I fight with my cousins, and my cousins and my brother and I fight against everybody else. So, yeah, sure.
So, again, it's kind of a historical thing. What is the present-day Croatian attitude towards their involvement in World War II?
Well, there were two major, in World War II, there were two major Croatian groups. And one became Nazi and one didn't. And so the ones who became Nazis, Stesny, I think is the name, basically, when the war was over, the Croatians tried to kill him. So Croatia itself was anti-Nazi, but there was a large faction in Croatia, of Croatians, who were pro-Nazi. And I think, if I remember right, those were the Ustasi. And they were Nazi sympathizers. They had a Vichy government like France.
You talk about the languages. I had the idea that Croatian and Serbian were essentially the same, although the Serbs used the Cyrillic alphabet and the Croatians used the Roman. But I had the idea that the speech was almost identical.
Yeah, it's oftentimes you hear the term Serbo-Croatian or Croat-Serbian, depends on who's saying it. The languages are different but mutually intelligible. They're different but mutually intelligible. So there are differences. Am I imagining things?
Can't they turn off their phone?
There should be a switch if it's an iPhone.
So the languages
on the
are
website.
mutually intelligible, but they are distinct. So, and as you point out, that's a good point. Serbian is written with Cyrillic, Croatian is written with Roman, or Italian, Latin letters.
I think there was also quite an Italian fascist group in Croatia. The connection between Croatia and Italy is very close, and Dubrovnik was definitely closely connected with Venice in former ages.
Yeah.
Would you repeat the question?
The question, it was a comment, really. She said there was a large fascist Italian community, and that's particularly up here in Istria.
Oh,
Here, Venice is right up here.
uh-huh.
And so here's Istria. That's the part. Basically, if you go back to the slide that I did with my grandparents or whatever, that I got, I mean, I can go through it, but this was Italian, and there was a strong Italian influence here, and they chose to affiliate with the fascists. And I don't know so much about Dubrovnik, but certainly out here, that was a strong Italian influence.
So I'm thinking of that picture of the various ships that came in along the harbor, and the comment that were maybe 10,000 people that would be arriving for the tourist season. Where?
That's a day.
A day, okay. So all the pictures that you showed were of sort of older buildings. What are they doing to keep up with the the explosion of tourists coming? And where do they stay? Is there, are there, what? Oh, so they stay on the ship?
Well, if they don't stay on the ship,
Or are there rules about architecture that have to remain in the old style?
I'm trying to see if I can find a good slide here. I don't have that, I don't have those views. The answer is, in the heart of the old city, like Dubrovnik, there are no new hotels.
Okay.
But if we go, and I wish can't orient it. If you, well, let's see. This is outside of the city. And if we were to come back this way, see the bridge? Across that bridge, you're going to come to dozens of large tourist hotels. So that the people stay on the ships. And Roger made the point in Venice, they stay on the ship, they don't use the restaurant so much. All they do is clutter the place up. But when I was there with Susan, we were on a cruise, but when I was there across this bridge, there's a bank of hotels looking back at the city.
And does that look like New York City with huge?
No, it looks like Dubrovnik. I mean, that may sound a little flippant, but it probably was. A lot of the contemporary architecture echoes the old architecture. So you don't, I mean, there are some monstrosities, but it's not like if you're, say, in Romania or Bulgaria, where the Stalinist architecture really became important. You don't see that here. You don't see that massive Stalinist Eastern European kind of architecture. So your largest hotels are probably going to be 300 to 400 rooms. Nothing like the big monstrosities. But a very good question. And I wish I can tell you where it is, but it's hard to wave my hands and make it appear. Yeah, Al?
You showed buildings for quarantining the crews of ships. And I wondered, quarantining from what, or just in general?
Oh, it was in general, but predominantly it was cholera. Cholera.
Okay.
Yeah, there were cholera epidemics worldwide, and basically quarantine 40 days was the incubation period of cholera. But there are other things as well, but that was the key. Was cholera. Any other questions? Back in the back. Oh.
Just a quick comment.
Marv
Harshman, who was the great basketball coach at Washington, went over to Dubrovnik, I think on 2 different summers, and came back talking about how great the athletes were over there.
Yeah. Split is well known for basketball. Tall.
Basketball?
Yeah, there are Croatians that play in the NBA. I can't remember their names, but there's several. But back to your point, Henry, it's transmitted through water. You asked about transmission of cholera.
Oh, yeah.
And it's transmitted through vomit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's person to person. Another back.
We stayed in Plitzvitz Lake. Just we drove in there and decided we were going to stay there, and had no trouble booking reservations in the hotel. It's like they were like lodges. It looked a lot like the lodge at Paradise here, and the service was wonderful and the food was fabulous. In the park, we walked and stayed on the trails because they warn you, don't get off the trails. There are still remnants of war ammunition off the trails.
There are also
so
bears.
If you're walking, you stay on the trails.
Yeah. I want to come back to this, so that there are. This is the main entrance where you go in. This is the main entrance where you go out. So usually you go around like this, and I think the hotels are back down this way in the town, if I remember right.
Well, I'm curious about, is there any concern about water levels rising, like Venice? Are there any issues with that?
Well, let's go back. Basically, the answer is no. You look where it is.
Some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The old city is up here. Probably like the harbor, there may be some down there, but most of it's up high. And Split, it's the same way. The Diocletian Palace is well up. But it's no way comparable to Venice, where you're walking. I mean, if you remember Roger's talk about St. Mark's Square, you walk around in the platforms because it's full of water. Anything else?
Anything else?
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.